As I mentioned in the previous video, after finishing Antigone by Sophocles from this collection, I am now working through whatever movie versions of Antigone that I can find that are freely available on YouTube. I believe in the previous video I may have said that there's a lot of them, but that may have been me getting a false impression, because I was going back through today and searching through YouTube, and it looks like there's only a couple of them that I could find in English. If I'm missing anything, by all means, let me know in the description down below. But this one is a 1961 version, and actually it's not in English. It's in Greek, but it's subtitled in English, and it's apparently a bit of a film classic. So I'm counting it, I watched it. And there's a version freely available on YouTube, which I'll link to in the description down below. Now, I've looked on the Wikipedia article, and I've looked on IMDb, and I can't tell if this is modern Greek or the original ancient Greek that the original was written in. If somebody knows, let me know. It's in a foreign language, is all I know. And of course, I listened to the Greek, but I wasn't really paying attention to it. I was focused on the English subtitles at the bottom of it. As I was watching this movie, I did get an impression that the cinematography in this movie was somewhat artfully done. And I'm not a film nut, so I don't know anything about this kind of stuff. But I have had a couple friends who were film nuts, and they used to talk about like the framing of the shot and how the characters were arranged and how the backgrounds were arranged. And there were a few shots in this movie that I thought to myself, my film geek friends would really love this. There were some shots where, particularly I think the shots in the palace, so there were a couple outside shots as well that were fully framed, but particularly the shots in the palace would have the characters position in a way that resembled like a painting, or it would be perfectly symmetrical in some shots. So, you go to Wikipedia, and sure enough, the director of this film is one of the most famous post-war Greek directors for Greek cinema. He's a guy who knew what he was doing, apparently. And the actress is also quite famous as well. I had never heard of her before, but again, you can look her up on Wikipedia. She's was a Greek actress, but was in a number of English-speaking films, and according to the Wikipedia bio, I think some of those films I've even seen. Like The Guns of Navarone, and maybe a couple others, I don't remember. The copy that's available on Wikipedia, on the copy that's freely available on YouTube, the copy I watched, and which I'll link to in the description down below, the audio sync gets a little bit off near the end. It's a minor irritation, but especially because if you're an English speaker, you're just watching the subtitles, it doesn't really matter anyways. The film is, it's well done. It does a good job of conveying the story. I mentioned in my previous video, the review of the 1986 BBC version of Antigone, that when I compared it to the version I had read, it seemed like the BBC version was adding in a lot of dialogue that wasn't in the original. Now, take me with a grain of salt, of course, because I've not read the original Greek. I'm just relying on English translations. But comparing the translation I read to the BBC version, seemed like a lot of dialogue was being added in. In this version, the 1961 version, and again, I'm just relying on the English subtitles, but it seemed like a lot of dialogue was being trimmed from this, particularly some of the long speeches by the chorus, but even some of the back and forth between the characters was very abbreviated, which is not a bad thing for a film. In my video yesterday, I mentioned that in spite of being a very good production, I felt a little bit bored during the last half hour of the BBC's version of Antigone. This version, which is only about 80 minutes, there's not much to get bored by, and it moves at a good clip. Taking out that extra dialogue helps make it more watchable and keeps things moving at a good clip. So, you know, it's one of those movies. It's only 80 minutes. You start it, you settle into it, and before you know it, it's already wrapping up. I don't know. Your mileage may vary. It could be that I'm, because I finished the 2-hour version of the BBC version yesterday. Maybe I'm comparing that. You know, maybe if this is your first film version of Antigone you watch, you might find it a little bit slower pace or hard to get through. I don't know. Let me know, as always. The ending is different in this version. Creon goes into exile instead of continuing to rule. It's something I had known before I even watched it because it's part of the Wikipedia article, but yeah, ending is different. I'm trying to think, what else is there to say about this? The acting is good. It was a good version of Antigone. I might just leave it here. So go and check it out yourself. And I think there's one more version of Antigone that I seem to have found on YouTube, 1970s television production. And then that might be the last one I review, and then on to something else.